If you were able to grab a bulletin insert out there, you'll see that today's, well, it's up on the screen as well, that today's sermon is titled Being Holy. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. Usually when we think of the word holy, obviously, holy God, all the things that surround that about God. But we're going to look at this a little bit today, and we're going to start out in the book of 1 Peter, chapter 1, beginning in verse 13, as Peter writes, "Therefore, prepare your minds for action. Be self-controlled. Set your hope fully on the grace to be given you when Jesus Christ is revealed. As obedient children, do not conform to the evil desires you had when you lived in ignorance." Excuse me. "But just as he who called you is holy, so be holy in all you do, for it is written, 'Be holy because I am holy.'" He's going to go on. "Since you call on a Father who judges each man's work impartially, live your lives as strangers here in reverent fear. For you know that it was not with perishable things such as silver or gold that you were redeemed from the empty way of life handed down to you from your forefathers, but with the precious blood of Christ, a lamb without blemish or defect." So as Peter's writing here, you'll notice that in the very beginning of what we read in 1 Peter, we're told to be holy as God is holy. Reference also back to Leviticus about that, "Be holy because I am holy." So we're getting this instruction here about, and you notice he begins there by talking about the fact, prepare your minds for action. Prepare your minds for action. So what does it mean to be holy or to live a holy life? A lot of times we kind of have a preconceived notion of what that means, and we're going to look at that, and that's exactly where we're going today. I want to pull that word holy that's in those verses. We're going to look at what the Greek word is, what the definition is. The word holy there in those verses is hagios, which means most holy thing, a saint. A most holy thing. Not just an average holy thing, I guess. A most holy thing. A saint. That word comes from another Greek word, sounds very similar, hagnos, pure from carnality. It's chaste, modest, pure from every fault. Immaculate, clean. Wow. That's pretty clean, pure thing. Now, when we think of holiness, obviously, in terms of God, the way that I like to think about it, and I've heard it many times, is that holiness, God is completely different than everything else. He's separate. You read this description here of pure from carnality, chaste, modest, pure from every fault, immaculate and clean. We know the scriptures tell us that God is light. There is no darkness in him. There is no sin in God. He is the only, if I can put it this way in human terms, he is the only thing in everything, in all creation, in everything, in the natural world, the spiritual world. There is nothing like him. There's nothing to compare him to. I can't compare him to me because I don't fit that description in my natural man. I'm not immaculate and clean. I'm not pure from carnality. This natural man is nothing but carnality. Okay? The angels can't be compared. Nothing in all of everything. Is there anything that you can find anywhere that you can compare to God? And oftentimes when we begin to think about holiness and what it means for me to live a holy life, to be holy as God is holy, and we read a definition like that, we can run into what is a very common mistake. And that is basically this. The common formula for holiness revolves around we don't or I can't. Okay? We read that definition, immaculate, clean, pure free from all carnality. And so a lot of times we'll look at that, and if I'm going to live a holy life, it revolves around the things I don't or won't do. For example, I just put a few up there. We don't cuss. We don't drink. We don't steal. We don't cheat on our spouse. We don't lose our temper, etc., etc., etc. I define that holiness by the things I abstain from. The things that I won't do, the things I don't do, the things that, I'm not supposed to do. The Bible tells us not to steal, so I don't steal. And if I don't do the things I'm not supposed to do, then somehow I'm achieving holiness. Is that wrong? No. But it's kind of like this. I walk up to you, I pull my wallet out, and I pull a $100 bill out, and I walk up to you and I say, I'm going to give you $100. Go have fun. Go out to eat. Do whatever. Buy something. Treat yourself. Pamper yourself with this $100 bill. But right before I hand it to you, I tear it in two, and I give you half and put the other half in my pocket. And then I say, there's your $100. Go have fun. What's the problem? You're going to look at me and go, you did not give me a $100 bill. This is not 100. It's not even legally half 100 by giving me half of the bill. It's not complete. I got half of it, but I don't have all of it. You got to give me the whole bill. I guess maybe we'll try some Scotch tape. I don't know if that works or not. But, I'll try some Scotch tape. If anybody here wants to give me half a $100 bill and the other half, I'll try Scotch tape. But it's not worth anything, or it's not complete if you don't have the whole thing. So, Peter writes there about be holy as God is holy. But notice what he says first. Prepare your minds for what? Action. There's more to living a holy life than just in the things that we abstain from. Much more. In Ephesians chapter 5, verses 1 and 2, it says, be imitators of God, therefore, as dearly loved children, and live a life of love, just as Christ loved us, and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. Be imitators of God. Well, okay. If I go through the list of the things I won't do, I'm imitating God. God doesn't cheat. God doesn't steal. God doesn't chase women. He doesn't do all those things. So if I'm imitating God, right? Half, yes. But being an imitator of God is way beyond that. We're going to look here in a second how Jesus is going to demonstrate that. But living a holy life is not just about the things I abstain from, but it's how that holiness plays out in my life and my actions. What I do. If all I'm going to do is put my life kind of like that, maybe you have something like this at your house. You have maybe it's an heirloom. Maybe it's something that's one of your favorite little, I call them dust collectors. They sit on a shelf. They look pretty. Okay? It doesn't do anything except sit there and look pretty. If my life of holiness is going to be where it's only based on what I don't do, then I'm kind of like that dust collector that sits on the shelf. Living a holy life, being an imitator of God, is not only that, but it's also in what I do. My actions. I can't do half and be living holy. I got to do the rest of it as well. So be an imitator of God. So what does that look like? Well, in John chapter 5, verse 19, Jesus gave them this answer. I tell you the truth, the Son can do nothing by himself. He can do only what he sees his Father doing, because whatever the Father does, the Son also does. So, let me ask you this question. See, in this portion of Scripture here, Jesus is butting heads with the chief priest, the priests, the Pharisees, all of them, because he dared to call God his Father. You don't do that. That's on that list of things that you don't do if you want to be righteous. They consider that blasphemy. That Jesus would call him his own Father and kind of put himself on the same level there with God. But let me ask you this question. Jesus was constantly butting heads. Why? What was one of the biggest things that Jesus was always being confronted and dealing with the Pharisees and the priests about? For example, he healed individuals, but what was the problem with the healings? Anybody know? It was on the Sabbath. You don't do that on the Sabbath. That's in that list of things we don't do. Now, I mean, we've talked about this before, but it amazes me in terms of the fact that Jesus did something at that point in time, whether it was the man born blind, or the lame, or the leprous. Jesus just did something that no one else in all of everything that exists could do. Nobody, not the angels. They even told him it was by the power of Satan. Satan can't do that. Jesus just did something that the only one in all earth, the spiritual realm, the cosmos, no one else could do. And they're hung up on the fact that he didn't follow the rules of you don't do this on this day. That was one of the biggest things that was a constant point of contention with the Pharisees and the priests. Jesus was doing something when he's not supposed to be doing it according to our rules. You want to be a good Jew? You want to be a good Hebrew? You want to be righteous? You don't do these things on the Sabbath. Jesus just said, I only do what I see my Father do. Guess what, guys? He did this on the Sabbath. Couldn't get their head around that. See, there was this established, we've talked about this, hundreds and hundreds of rules that they had come up with, the things that you don't do to be what? Holy, righteous. And if you break that, we're going to try and kill you. And so here's the thing. The other half of this holiness that makes the whole thing come together, it's not just in the things that I abstain from, but it's the things that I do that reflect God and the holiness of God. Jesus, I'm not going to put words in Jesus' mouth, but it's kind of like this. Yeah, guys, I know what your rules are, but I only do what I see the Father do, and the Father's saying, heal that guy. I don't see Jesus arguing with him, Lord, but the rules say I can't do it today. Father, I can't do this. It's breaking the rules. Heal the man. Give him his sight back. Make him walk. Heal their leprosy. Whatever it is. They had that little confrontation when Jesus and his disciples, the officials saw them walking through, it must have been a wheat field of some kind. And the disciples are even just picking off heads of grain to put in their mouth and chew on. You can't do that. Then Jesus came back again and dealt with them on that sort of thing. See, they were hung up on the fact that if we're going to be right, if we're going to be righteous, then it is about what we do not do, what we abstain from. You can only walk so many miles on the Sabbath. you can only do this or do that, or, whatever it is, you can't do these things. But Jesus is demonstrating that if I'm going to be holy, he didn't have this. He was already holy. But for me as a follower of Jesus, if I'm going to be holy, it's not only in the things I don't do, but if I see my Father do, or He tells me to do, He's working in me, then that's going to show up in my actions. As a follower of Jesus Christ, if I'm going to live out a holy life, then I'm going to love you unconditionally. How can I do that? I'm nothing in this flesh but a big bag of carnal mess. How am I going to love you as Christ loved you? I haven't got the ability to do that, but a holy God who can do that, guess what? Lives in me, and because He lives in me and gives me the power to live out His holiness, love unconditionally. How can a God, unless He is so separate, so holy, how can He have mercy on you and I? We don't deserve it. Well, Pastor, I'm not that bad a person. Well, I'll agree with that. But spiritually, we're all reprobate. How can God love us so much, have mercy on us? It's out of this holiness, He's completely different. So how in the world am I going to live that? The only way I can do that, and the only way I'm going to share that mercy, the only way I'm going to have the same kind of compassion, the only way I'm going to reach out to those in need and those that are hurting, is through the holy God that lives in me, and that holiness is living out through me. But not if my idea of holiness is I'm going to sit on the shelf and it's just all about what I don't do. Don't I look pretty? I'm clean. I sparkle. But you don't do anything. And so here's Jesus saying, I do only what I see my Father doing. And whatever the Father does, the Son does. Think about that statement. If you and I only did what we saw the Father do, would you need rules? No. God doesn't cheat. If I only did what the Father did, I wouldn't cheat. I don't see God steal. I don't steal. I see God reach out and help someone and touch someone who's in need, someone who is in physical need, spiritual need, financial need, hungry, whatever it might be. I see God do that. I don't need a rule to tell me to do that then, do I? God is the standard of holiness and righteousness. If I just follow Him, forget the 600 rules that they came up with. Just something to think about. Matthew 7:21. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Very deep, cutting verse. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only he who does the will of my Father. What is the will of the Father? Well, the will of the Father is many things. Jesus gave us the will of the Father, and the last thing He told us before He left. Go and make disciples. Why? It's not the Father's will that any should perish. That holiness and all that entails, that whole idea of unconditional love, that even while we were sinners, Christ died for us. Even while we were up to our foreheads in the mess of our life, even though maybe some of us were shaking our fists at God going, I hate you, He still loved us. He still showed mercy to us. He still sent Jesus. I mean, that picture of that just gets me every time. When they arrested Jesus and they went through everything, Jesus went through everything. He was beaten, flogged. A better term for it is butchered. And they take him out there. I mean, he is a mess. If he hadn't been God, I'm not sure he would have survived it, because he probably got a beating worse than any other human has ever had. And they take him out there and they nail him to a cross. They drive the nails through the hands, the feet. He's hanging there in absolute agony. They're still mocking. They're still jeering. They're still probably spitting toward him. They're probably doing all sorts of things. The soldiers are rolling dice to get his clothes. And what does he say? You guys remember? He cries out to the Father and he says what? Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Only a holy God could say that. And only a holy God that is living and working in you and I could we ever even come close to having that kind of love, grace, mercy, willingness to forgive those who are butchering us. But that's what we're called to. Be holy as I am holy. Abstain from the evil desires of this world. Absolutely. But don't stop there. It's only half of it. Matthew 5:16. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. Okay, we all probably have a pretty good idea where this verse comes from. Jesus talking about salt and light. And this is toward the end of that particular teaching, but he's talking about the whole idea of you don't light a lamp and put it under a bowl. You light a lamp so you let the light shine. Well, here at toward the end of this discourse, this teaching and Jesus talking about, he says this, in the same way, let your light shine before men. Who is that light? I have no light within me of my own. It's Christ in me, working in me, through me. But notice what he says, that they may see your good, what? Deeds. Not that you're sitting on a shelf. You know, everybody's going to know that I'm a Christian by what I don't do. I'm pious and chaste, and I don't do these things. Jesus is being reflected in my life. Not the way it's supposed to. That they may see your good deeds for what effect? That they will see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. In other words, they're going to look at you living out your holy life, not only in your things you abstain from, but the things you do, and they're going to go, wow. I've never seen anything like that. How do you do that? Because there is nothing else in all creation that could do that. They're going to see the holiness of God through what we do, not just what we don't do. I mean, they got to work together. And that only happens, the only way that even this verse is going to come out and actually be something real is if that holy God is living in you through His Holy Spirit. So, for each of us, I have to ask myself this as well. In my holiness, in my trying to walk as I've been commanded to walk, try to be holy as God is holy, where am I at? Have I got half of it down? Have I got the I don'ts down? Because if that's all we're working with, we're not living a holy life. We're not living a holy life. This altar is open as it always is. You feel the Lord speaking to you right now, feel free. You can come up as we sing these last songs. We'll pray. But I'm going to just ask the Lord to take each of us on a little journey. Lord, where am I at? Am I in that spot where the Pharisees were at, where it's all about what I don't do? Or is my holy walk with you the complete deal, the real deal? Let's pray. Father, I